What if your suffering is not caused by people, not by life, not by destiny, but by your expectations? You expect loyalty. You expect appreciation. You expect understanding. You expect love to return in the same form you give it. And when it doesn't, you feel betrayed. But what if the pain was never about them? What if it was about the silent contracts you created in your own mind? Rumi once taught that attachment is the root of unrest. Not love, attachment. Not care, expectation. Tonight, we explore a dangerous truth. Freedom begins where expectation ends. Chapter 1. The invisible contracts we create. There's a quiet habit most people never notice. It begins in silence. You meet someone. You care for them. You give your time, your attention, your kindness. And without realizing it, you write a contract in your mind. If I show up for you, you will show up for me. If I support you, you will support me. If I love you deeply, you will love me the same way. You never say out loud. You never sign it, but you expect it to be honored. And when it is not, something inside you breaks. Rumi teaches that much of our suffering is born from illusions we cling to. We imagine people will behave according to our inner script. We assume they value what we value. We believe they see the world the way we do. But they do not. They're living inside their own minds, carrying their own wounds, chasing their own desires. They never agreed to the story you wrote for them. Yet when they fail to follow it, we call it betrayal. Is it betrayal or is it unmet expectation? Think carefully. When someone forgets to check on you, does it hurt because they forgot or because you expected them to remember? When someone does not appreciate your effort, does it sting because they're cruel or because you silently demanded recognition? The pain feels real, but the source is subtle. Expectation is a quiet architect of disappointment. Rumi once suggested that attachment clouds perception. When we attach our peace to outcomes, to responses, to reactions, we surrender our freedom. We make our happiness dependent on another person's behavior, and that is a fragile foundation. You may say, but isn't it natural to expect respect? Isn't it human to expect love? Yes, it is human, but it is also human to suffer. There is a difference between healthy standards and emotional contracts. Standards protect your dignity. Contracts attempt to control outcomes. A standard says, if this is not reciprocated, I will step away. An expectation says, you must reciprocate because I deserve it. One gives you power. The other hands it away. Rumi's wisdom does not tell you to stop caring. It invites you to see clearly, to understand that every time you give with a hidden condition, you create vulnerability to resentment. When you help someone and secretly hope they will owe you, you are no longer giving freely. When you love someone and silently demand they love you back the same way, you are bargaining. And bargaining turns affection into a transaction. The soul, Rumi teaches, seeks freedom, but the ego seeks validation. The ego whispers, after all I've done, they should. The soul whispers, give because it is in your nature to give. Notice the difference. Invisible contracts are written by the ego. They are signed in pride. And when they are broken, pride bleeds. You expected loyalty. You expected gratitude. You expected effort. But expectation is a claim over something you never truly owned, another person's will. The moment you realize this, something shifts. You begin to see that your pain was not entirely caused by others. It was strengthened by the story you created about how they should behave. This realization is uncomfortable. It removes the simple villain. It forces you to look inward instead of pointing outward. But it is also empowering, because if expectation created your suffering, then releasing expectation can restore your peace. Rumi encourages us to empty ourselves of illusions, to meet people as they are, not as we wish them to be, to give without attaching chains to the gift. Imagine loving without writing contracts. Imagine helping without keeping score. Imagine offering kindness without demanding applause. How light would you feel? This is not weakness. It is clarity. When you stop assuming others owe you emotional repayment, you stop waiting for something that may never come. You reclaim your energy. You return to yourself. And slowly, you begin to understand. Freedom does not start when people change. Freedom starts when you stop expecting them to. And this is where detachment begins. Chapter 2. Expectation is the ego's demand. Expectation does not come from love. It comes from the ego. It disguises itself as fairness, as logic, even as self-respect. But beneath its polished surface lies a quiet demand. Recognize me, reward me, choose me, value me. The ego is subtle. It does not shout at first. It whispers. It tells you that after everything you have done, appreciation is only reasonable, that after giving so much, you deserve something in return. And perhaps you do. But notice the tension that follows. The moment your peace depends on recognition, you are no longer free. You are negotiating your worth through someone else's response. Rumi teaches that the ego builds walls around the heart. It wants to be seen as important, as irreplaceable, as necessary. It says, if they truly love me, they will behave differently. But love is not a script. The ego wants guarantees. It wants certainty. It wants assurance that your investment will produce emotional profit. Yet life does not operate on guarantees. Think about how often disappointment begins with the phrase, after all I did for you, after all I sacrificed, after all I tolerated. Those words are not born from generosity. They are born from a ledger, a mental account book tracking every effort, every favor, every moment of patience. The ego keeps score, and when the balance feels uneven, it demands repayment. But love that keeps score is no longer love. It is control. Rumi invites us to dissolve the ego, not to erase our identity, but to soften our grip on it. When the ego shrinks, so do our demands. When it loosens its hold, so does our need for validation. Ask yourself honestly, when you feel hurt, is it always because someone harmed you or because they did not confirm your importance? The ego fears being insignificant. It fears being overlooked, so it builds expectations as protection. It believes, if I expect loyalty, I will not be abandoned. If I expect gratitude, I will not feel invisible. But expectation cannot protect you from pain. It often creates it. Rumi speaks of becoming empty, not empty of love, but empty of pride, empty of a need to be repaid, empty of the urge to control how others respond. When you give because it is your nature to give, you remain whole regardless of the outcome. But when you give a secure an identity, the generous one, the loyal one, the understanding one, you become fragile. Because now your self-image depends on others confirming it. The ego says, they owe me. The soul says, nothing is owed. The ego says, I deserve better treatment. The soul says, I choose what aligns with my peace. There's power in that difference. Detachment is not indifference. It is freedom from egoic demand. It is the ability to love without insisting on a mirror, to act without demanding applause. When you release the need to be recognized for every sacrifice, something shifts inside you. You stop feeling constantly evaluated. You stop measuring your worth against reactions. And strangely, you begin to feel lighter. The ego thrives on comparison. It asks, why did they respond differently to someone else? Why did they prioritize them over me? It feeds on insecurity. But Rumi reminds us that each soul walks its own path. People give according to their capacity, not according to your expectation. If someone cannot meet you where you stand, it does not mean you are unworthy. It means they are limited. And demanding more from a limited heart only exhausts your own. When expectation dissolves, resentment fades. When resentment fades, clarity returns. You see people not as extensions of your will, but as independent beings with their own struggles, fears, and shortcomings. This understanding softens you. You begin to choose your actions not to secure outcomes, but to reflect your character. You help because it aligns with who you are. You love because it expresses your nature. You walk away when necessary, not in anger, but in dignity. This is the beginning of ego transcendence. And when the ego no longer dictates your emotional state, you experience a new kind of freedom, one that does not rise and fall with every reaction. Expectation was the ego's demand. Detachment is the soul's release. And in that release, peace quietly enters. Chapter 3. The Weight of Attachment. Attachment does not begin loudly. It begins softly with preference, with desire, with hope. You meet someone, you feel connection, you feel warmth, and slowly, almost invisibly, that warmth becomes dependence. You do not just enjoy their presence, you need it. You do not just appreciate their words, you wait for them. You do not just value their love, you anchor your peace to it. And this is where attachment begins to grow. Rumi teaches that love is expansive, but attachment is restrictive. Love flows, attachment clings. Love gives space. Attachment tightens its grip. At first, attachment feels beautiful. It feels intense. It feels meaningful. You tell yourself, this matters so much because I care so deeply. But look closely. When they respond slowly, your mood shifts. When they pull away slightly, your mind races. When they disappoint you, your entire inner world trembles. Why? Because your peace is no longer yours. Attachment quietly transfers your emotional stability into someone else's hands. You begin to live in reaction rather than in presence. Rumi often spoke of holding water gently in your palm. If you squeeze it tightly, it escapes. The tighter the grip, the faster it disappears. Attachment works the same way. The more you fear losing something, the more you cling. The more you cling, the more tension you create. The more tension you create, the more fragile the bond becomes. Attachment is built on fear. Fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear of being alone, and fear always carries weight. Notice how heavy you feel when you are attached. You overthink conversations. You analyze tone. You interpret silence as danger. You imagine endings before they happen. Love does not create this chaos. Attachment does. Love says, I cherish you. Attachment says, I cannot be okay without you. Love is steady. Attachment is anxious. When you attach your happiness to a person, a result, or a future scenario, you make yourself vulnerable to every shift in circumstance. Your peace becomes conditional. I will be calm if they reply. I will be happy if this works out. I will feel secure if they choose me. But life does not promise permanence. People change, situations shift, feelings evolve. And when what you cling to begins to move, you feel as though you are falling. Rumi's wisdom invites us to experience love fully, but without possession, to appreciate deeply, but without claiming ownership, to care, but without chaining our peace to the outcome. Detachment is not coldness. It is balance. It is the ability to say, I value you, but I do not collapse without you. It is the strength to love without losing yourself. When you detach, you do not stop caring. You stop gripping. You stop monitoring every signal. You stop fearing every silence. You allow things to be, and something surprising happens. When you release attachment, you actually feel more present. You enjoy moments instead of guarding them. You experience connection without constantly calculating its future. Attachment is heavy because it is rooted in insecurity. Detachment is light because it is rooted in self-sufficiency. When your inner world is stable, you no longer need others to regulate it. You no longer panic at uncertainty. You no longer demand constant reassurance. You become whole within yourself. Rumi suggests that when you look for completion outside yourself, you remain restless. But when you realize you are already whole, your relationships become choices, not survival strategies. And that changes everything. The weight begins to lift. The anxiety begins to soften. The grip begins to loosen. You still love, you still care, but you do not cling. And in that gentle release, you discover something extraordinary. When you stop holding too tightly, you stop losing yourself, and freedom feels lighter than attachment ever did. Chapter 4. The Pain of Unreturned Effort. There is a particular kind of pain that feels deeply personal. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is quiet and heavy. It is the pain of giving more than you receive. You show up consistently. You listen carefully. You sacrifice your time, your comfort, your pride. And somewhere inside, you believe it will be mirrored, not because you demanded it out loud, but because it feels fair. And when it is not returned, something inside you hardens. Resentment does not appear instantly. It grows slowly. First, you feel disappointment, then confusion, then the silent question, why don't they care the way I do? Rumi reminds us that suffering often begins where expectation hides. When you give with the secret hope of equal return, your generosity becomes conditional. It may look pure on the outside, but inside, it carries a quiet requirement. I gave this to you, so you should give it back. And when that return does not come, your heart feels cheated. But consider this. Was your giving truly free? Or was it an investment waiting for profit? There is nothing wrong with desiring reciprocity. Healthy relationships require balance. But suffering intensifies when your inner peace depends on that balance being perfect. When you measure effort, you begin to calculate worth. I tried harder. I loved more. I stayed longer. I forgave more. The ego keeps score, and every imbalance feels like injustice. But Rumi teaches that giving rooted in ego eventually turns into bitterness, because ego-based generosity always expects acknowledgement. The soul gives differently. The soul gives because it is abundant, not because it is bargaining. When you give from fullness, you remain steady even if the other person cannot match you. But when you give to secure love, approval, or validation, you become vulnerable to disappointment. The pain of unreturned effort is often the pain of unmet expectation. You believed your loyalty would guarantee loyalty. You believed your patience would guarantee patience. You believed your depth would guarantee depth. But people give according to their capacity, not according to your standards. And this is difficult to accept because it forces you to confront a humbling truth. You cannot love someone into becoming who you wish they were. No amount of extra effort can manufacture emotional maturity in another person. No sacrifice can force awareness into someone who is not ready. Rumi invites us to examine our intentions gently. When you give, ask yourself, would I still do this if nothing returned to me? If the answer is no, then be honest with yourself. Adjust your boundaries. Protect your energy. But do not give and then punish someone for failing to meet a standard they never agreed to. Resentment is often generosity that expected applause. Detachment changes the dynamic. It allows you to give consciously, not compulsively. To offer support without draining yourself. To love without collapsing when it is not mirrored perfectly. You begin to see imbalance not as betrayal, but as information. If someone consistently gives less, you do not explode in anger. You do not spiral into self-doubt. You simply observe. And then you decide. You either accept the dynamic peacefully, or you step away with dignity. No drama, no scorekeeping, no silent punishment. Because when you detach from expectation, unreturned effort no longer feels like personal rejection. It becomes clarity, and clarity is powerful. You realize that your value is not defined by how someone responds to you. Your kindness does not diminish because it was not celebrated. Your depth does not shrink because it was not understood. You remain who you are, and that is freedom. The pain of unreturned effort softens when you stop giving to secure something. Give because it reflects your character. Stay because it aligns with your peace. Leave when necessary, without bitterness. When expectation dissolves, resentment cannot survive, and your heart becomes lighter once more. Chapter 5. Control is an illusion. Expectation is not only attachment, it is control in disguise. You expect because you want certainty. You expect because uncertainty feels unsafe. You expect because if things unfold the way you imagined, you believe you will finally feel secure. But life does not bend to imagination. You try to control how someone feels about you. You try to control how quickly they respond. You try to control when opportunities arrive. You try to control how long love lasts. And when reality refuses to obey, frustration rises. Rumi reminds us that life moves with its own rhythm. The river does not rush because you are impatient. The sun does not rise earlier because you are anxious. The seasons do not pause because you are afraid of change. Yet we attempt to command people and outcomes as if they are extensions of our will. Expectation says, it should happen this way. Reality says, it will happen its way. And in that tension, suffering begins. Control feels powerful at first. It gives the illusion of stability. If you plan enough, analyze enough, anticipate enough, Maybe nothing will surprise you. But control is fragile. You cannot control someone's heart. You cannot control their maturity. You cannot control their loyalty. You cannot control timing. You can influence. You can communicate. You can choose. But control? That belongs to illusion. Rumi speaks of surrender not as weakness, but as alignment. When you stop fighting the current, you stop exhausting yourself. When you stop demanding guarantees, you stop living in constant anxiety. Think about how much energy is spent trying to manage outcomes, replaying conversations in your head, predicting possible scenarios, overanalyzing tone and silence, preparing for endings that have not arrived. All of it is an attempt to control the unknown. But the unknown is not your enemy. It is simply life unfolding. When you release the need to control, something unexpected happens. You do not become passive. You become present. Instead of forcing outcomes, you focus on your actions. Instead of obsessing over results, you refine your character. Instead of gripping tightly, you stand steady. Detachment is not giving up responsibility. It is giving up obsession. You still act with intention. You still speak your truth. You still set boundaries. But you no longer demand that the universe comply. There is deep peace in accepting this. You are responsible for your effort, not the outcome. You are responsible for your integrity, not others' reactions. You are responsible for your choices, not the entire future. When you try to control everything, you live in fear of losing control. But when you accept that control was never fully yours, fear begins to loosen. Rumi's wisdom teaches trust, not blind trust in outcomes, but trust in the unfolding. Trust that whatever leaves was never truly yours to hold. Trust that what remains aligns with your growth. Control tightens the heart. Surrender softens it. And a softened heart is not weak. It is resilient because it no longer shatters when plans change. Imagine how light you would feel if you stopped trying to manage every response, every possibility, every outcome. Imagine waking up without the pressure to ensure everything goes your way. Life becomes less of a battle and more of a journey. When expectation dissolves, control loses its grip, and when control loosens, freedom quietly enters. You stop forcing. You stop chasing certainty. You stop trying to command what was never yours to command. And in that surrender, you discover something powerful. Peace was never found in control. It was found in release. Chapter 6. The Freedom of Letting Go. There is a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when you realize you are tired. Tired of overthinking. Tired of waiting for validation. Tired of replaying conversations in your head. Tired of hoping people will finally become who you imagine them to be. And in that exhaustion, something begins to shift. You start to understand that holding on has cost you more than letting go ever will. Rumi teaches that when you release what no longer serves your peace, you make space for something higher. But release is not easy. It feels unnatural at first. The mind resists. The ego protests. It says, if you let go, you will lose everything. But what if you were never holding everything, only holding tension? Letting go is not abandoning care. It is abandoning struggle. It is a decision to stop forcing conversations, to stop chasing clarity from those who remain unclear, to stop demanding consistency from those who are inconsistent. You begin to withdraw your energy from what drains you, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in awareness. There's profound dignity in that awareness. You realize you do not need to fight for attention. You do not need to convince someone to see your value. You do not need to exhaust yourself proving your worth. What is meant for you will not require constant persuasion. When you let go of expectation, your body feels lighter. The tension in your chest softens. The urgency fades. You no longer wake up checking for responses. You no longer feel your mood rise and fall with someone's tone. Your stability returns to you. Rumi often speaks of emptiness as a gateway to transformation. When you empty yourself of attachment, you create space. Space for peace, space for clarity, space for self-respect. Letting go is an act of self-trust. It says, I trust that I will be okay even if this does not work out. It says, I trust that my worth is not dependent on this outcome. It says, I trust that life is unfolding in ways I cannot fully see. That trust is powerful, because when you stop gripping tightly, you stop living in fear of loss. You begin to understand that nothing external defines your wholeness. Detachment allows you to love freely, not desperately. To act sincerely, not anxiously. To walk away peacefully, not dramatically. And this is freedom. Freedom from constant anticipation. Freedom from emotional bargaining. Freedom from silent contracts. You no longer measure your day by someone else's response. You no longer calculate how much you gave versus how much you received. You simply live in alignment with your values. If someone meets you there, beautiful. If they do not, you remain steady. Letting go does not mean you never feel sadness. It means sadness no longer controls you. It means disappointment does not destroy you. It means uncertainty does not terrify you, because your foundation is no longer external. Rumi's wisdom reminds us that what falls away was never meant to define us. When you release with grace, you do not shrink, you expand. You become calm where you were once anxious. You become grounded where you were once reactive. You become whole where you once felt incomplete. And perhaps the most surprising truth is this. When you truly let go, you stop fearing loss. Because you finally understand, you cannot lose what is aligned with your soul. And you were never meant to carry what is not. Chapter 7. When you detach, you become magnetic. There's a quiet transformation that happens when you stop chasing. It is not loud, it is not dramatic, but it changes everything. When you detach from expectation, your energy shifts. You no longer move from desperation. You no longer seek constant reassurance. You no longer look at every interaction as proof of your worth. And people feel that. Attachment repels because it pressures. It says, stay. It says, choose me. It says, confirm my value. Even if those words are never spoken, the energy is heavy. Detachment attracts because it is calm. It says, I appreciate you, but I'm complete on my own. It says, I welcome you, but I do not depend on you. It says, I offer my presence, not my need. Rumi speaks of becoming the sun instead of chasing light. The sun does not beg the planets to revolve around it. It simply shines. Its warmth is natural. Its presence is steady. When you detach, you become like that. You stop over-explaining. You stop over-giving. You stop overthinking. You begin to respond instead of react. There is dignity in that restraint. When someone pulls away, you do not panic. When someone delays a reply, you do not spiral. When someone cannot meet your depth, you do not collapse. You observe, and in that observation, you maintain power. Magnetism is not created by force. It is created by stability, by grounded confidence, by the absence of emotional chaos. When you are detached, you are no longer trying to convince anyone to stay. You are not trying to earn affection through exhaustion. You are not shrinking yourself to fit someone else's comfort. You stand as you are, and that steadiness is rare. People are drawn to what feels secure, to what feels centered, to what does not cling or chase. Attachment whispers, "Don't leave me." Detachment calmly says, "If you leave, I remain whole." That wholeness changes how you walk, how you speak, how you love. You begin to choose rather than pursue. You begin to allow rather than demand. You begin to accept rather than control. And ironically, when you stop needing someone, you create space for them to step closer. Because there is no pressure, no suffocation, no silent contracts. Rumi's wisdom teaches that what you seek is also seeking you, but only when you are aligned. Alignment comes from self-respect, not desperation. Detachment strengthens self-respect. You stop tolerating inconsistency disguised as affection. You stop chasing clarity from confusion. You stop bending your boundaries for temporary validation. Instead, you remain still, and stillness is powerful. It signals that you know your worth, that you trust your path, that you do not measure yourself through another's approval. When you detach, your presence becomes lighter, calmer, stronger. You are no longer trying to extract love. You are offering it freely. That freedom is magnetic, not because you are performing, not because you're trying to attract, but because you are no longer afraid. And when fear dissolves, confidence emerges naturally. You realize that you were never meant to beg for what aligns with you. You were meant to embody it. So you shine, quietly, steadily. And those who are meant to stand in your warmth will come closer. Not because you chase them, but because you no longer needed to. Chapter 8. Loving Without Chains. There's a form of love that suffocates, and there's a form of love that liberates. The difference is not intensity. It is not passion. It is not devotion. It is attachment. When love is tied to expectation, it becomes heavy. It begins to say, "Stay the same." It begins to say, "Respond the way I need." It begins to say, "Do not disappoint me." And slowly, love turns into pressure. But Rumi speaks of a different kind of love, a love without chains, a love that flows without possession, a love that gives without keeping score. Loving without chains does not mean loving without boundaries. It does not mean accepting disrespect or tolerating imbalance. It means loving without trying to control the outcome. It means saying, "I choose you," not "you must choose me." There's profound strength in that difference. When you love without chains, you allow people to be who they are. You do not shrink them to fit your comfort. You do not mold them into your expectations. You see them clearly, their strengths, their flaws, their limits. And you decide consciously whether they align with your peace. If they do, you stay freely. If they do not, you leave peacefully. No bitterness, no silent punishment, no emotional debt, because love was never meant to be a contract. Rumi teaches that true love expands the soul. It does not imprison it. When you attach chains to love, you owe me loyalty, You owe me attention. You owe me forever. You create fear. Fear of loss. Fear of change. Fear of being replaced. But when love is free, it is fearless. You appreciate moments without clinging to permanence. You cherish connection without demanding guarantees. You give affection because it reflects your nature, not because you are securing something in return. And this kind of love feels different. It feels calm. It feels spacious. It feels steady. You are no longer scanning for threats. You are no longer measuring effort. You are no longer interpreting every shift as danger. You simply love. If it grows, beautiful. If it fades, you accept the season. Because you understand something deeper now. Nothing external completes you. You were whole before they arrived. You remain whole if they leave. That realization removes fear from love. Rumi often reminds us that attachment to form blinds us to essence. People may change. Circumstances may shift. But the love you gave sincerely was never wasted. It shaped you. It refined you. It revealed your capacity. And that is enough. Loving without chains means you no longer try to own hearts. You no longer demand permanence. You no longer fear endings as personal failure. You love fully, and you release gracefully. In that release, you discover the highest form of freedom, not freedom from love, but freedom within it. And when love is free, it becomes purer, not because it is guaranteed, but because it is chosen every day without fear, without control, without chains. And that is where true peace begins. Liberation through detachment. There's a quiet power in release, a power that does not shout, a power that does not demand, a power that does not cling. You have carried expectations like stones in your pockets. You have hoped, demanded, waited, and suffered. You have counted favors, measured love, and whispered silent contracts to your own heart. And now, imagine letting them all go. Rumi teaches that freedom is not outside of you. It does not come from others. It does not come from outcomes. It comes from within, from releasing the grip, from stopping the struggle, from seeing clearly. When you detach, you are no longer pulled by every reaction. You are no longer fragile when someone fails to meet your invisible contracts. You no longer collapse when life does not align with your plans. You stand steady, calm, whole. You begin to love without chains. You begin to give without expecting. You begin to act without obsessing over results. And in that surrender, you discover a truth that the mind has always resisted. You were never imprisoned by the actions of others. You were never diminished by what they could not give. You were never defined by the reflection of your efforts in their eyes. All along, the chains were in your own hands. The weight was in your own expectation. The prison was built by the ego, disguised as love. Now you release it. You release control. You release need. You release fear. And in that release, you find everything. Freedom, peace, clarity, strength. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer bargaining. You are no longer afraid. You are free. And freedom is magnetic. It draws the right people. It aligns the right circumstances. It creates a life that is unshakable, steady, and abundant. Rumi whispers across centuries, detach from expectation. Let go, flow with the river, love without chains, and discover the soul's quiet power that was always yours. Breathe, release, live. You are whole. You are enough. You are free.